everybody. Welcome back to our latest episode of Cognitive Dissidence. I am the host for this evening with my co-host. I'm Parallel Mike.
I'm Monica Perez from The Monica Perez Show.
I'm Jorge from Geopolitics and Empire, and we don't usually do this, but I need to plug one of my sponsors real quick. Let me share the screen. It's the Expat Money online summit happening next month in October. It's free. Mikhail Thorpe, he's been on my podcast. I've been on his. So it's free, and you just go to expatmoneysummit.com to sign up to the free live stream. I'll be on one of the VIP panels. Pretty cool. Look, there I am. And if you use the code EMPIRE, you get 20% off the VIP access, which gives you the lifetime replays and access to the VIP panels. So gotta plug them. Mikhail's been a big help for Geopolitics and Empire. So that's that. Take it away, Mike.
Okay, plugging complete. Yeah, so we've got a lot to talk about, as always. Every single month, we've got some big narratives, and this month doesn't disappoint, although it's not the nicest topic. It's the most recent one, which is the Charlie Kirk shooting. So I thought maybe we could start with that one. Um, I'll hand it over to you guys actually to begin with. I wasn't actually somebody who knew much about Charlie Kirk. I'd seen him by accident just on online videos. Of course, like any major assassination or whatever people want to call it, there's all kinds of theories going on. And it's still only a few days. So I think there's a lot of processing of that day that still needs to go on. It feels like it's already skipped on to other things, but actually we don't really know the facts of the day itself. We don't have much evidence, and it's not, I wouldn't say the investigation has been transparent, and I don't know if protocol's being followed, but it doesn't feel like it to me. So I'm going to hand it over to you maybe first, Roy. How are you feeling about this? Do you think it's significant and it's going to have any impact in terms of other things that are happening in America?
Hey, look at that. Charlie Kirk followed me on X. Isn't that pretty cool?
Wow.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm just gonna real quick. My two cents is that I believe this was another one of those deep events, false flag operation, which means by that, people get nitpicky with that, but basically nothing is what it seems. So it was a fault, it was the timing tells you many things, 9/10, right around 9/11. And you can just go down the list. People are doing this all over the social medias, right? And I always caution with not going too schizo. We're never going to get to the bottom of this, right? It's never going to be revealed. It's 24 years after 9/11, and we're still debating, was it nanothermite or was it direct energy weapons, right? With JFK. And so we're never going to get to the bottom of it. And I just want to take the more academic approach where like folks like the architects for and engineers for 9/11 truth, that sort of type of approach where you stick with the core facts, because you're not going to, if you start jumping off the deep end, people are just going to roll their eyes at you. And so basically my conclusion is it was a professional job, right? There are so many anomalies everywhere, weird things, when Cash Patel says 33, right? All of that occult symbology. The fact that Charlie Kirk's wife comes out so quick, so slick with all of these, government tinged, eulogies or talks, really weird stuff, right? The Patsy, it's basically Lee Harvey Oswald 2.0. So all of this stuff, and my core conclusion is we're never going to get to the bottom of it. I don't see any use in, this guy's got some people say he's still alive. And I'm kind of like, okay, how would that work out? Is he going to live in a cave the rest of his life if he's still alive? But the most important thing here, I think, is number one, it was a globalist deep state operation. They want to manufacture civil war because Americans don't really want to go to civil war. So they need to manufacture events to radicalize us, and this is now serving to radicalize the right, don't you think? And to bring in the police state, Monica's done, I think, a deeper dive on that to get rid of free speech. Pam Bondi's talking about that. Marco Rubio is talking about stripping U.S. passports from citizens. So bring in digital ID, surveillance, Palantir. Don't forget Israel's role in this. I found it odd that Netanyahu and Gantz and others tweeted so quickly. And then Ben Shapiro's taking over TP USA. So it's kind of like, That's my sort of 2 cents. It was a deep event being used by the globalist deep state establishment. Whether Charlie is still alive or not, you know,
Yeah. I think you picked up on some, just before I hand it over to you, Monica, there was so many odd things about this. Just to go through a few, there was the guy who jumped up and started cheering and shouting USA,
Zin
USA
is
just
it?
after the
Yeah.
shooting.
Or,
And I looked into that, and apparently nobody knows who he is. You know, in a world of online media where they can find anyone and anyone at any point within minutes, this guy has no digital footprint whatsoever, no social media profiles. All we know is he was called David. Then there was the other guy, the old man Zin, who was so disorientated by what happened, he thought he'd shot Charlie Kirk, and he started screaming and shouting and yelling. Turns out he hadn't shot him, but he was convinced he had, right at the moment when most people would want to be taking in what's happening and, you know, the most critical moment. What's gone on here? What can we see? What can we hear? This guy starts creating a huge distraction. The shooter on the roof, the sniper, we have footage again of him setting up. Nobody's doing anything, but people are filming him. We also have footage of him jumping off with no weapon, but apparently the weapon was found in a forest nearby. So how did the weapon get there? People are saying it was a Mauser rifle. So what? He disassembled the rifle, jumped off the roof with it in his backpack, then reassembled it, and then scattered some ammo with engravings on. Listen, I could go on. There's lots and lots of weird things about this. And I tend to think that's the point, that there is a million routes and avenues you could go down from the okay, maybe it was a professional hit by a foreign actor, maybe it was Israel, maybe the US was involved, right up until the far extreme of conspiracy, like it was a clone, it wasn't really Charlie Kirk, and I've heard and seen all of it. But where I got to was after a couple of days, I was like, this is becoming a swamp as it always does. And it's not useful to even focus on that anymore. What's more important is how's it going to be used? And I think we saw right away in the immediate aftermath how it was being used, which was there was this scrambling for the narrative. The guy's a leftist. No, the guy's a conservative. And then we saw all the videos of people, you know, right now there's videos of people smashing up the memorials, and it's really pouring fuel on that Civil War narrative. But yeah, I guess for me, the significance is this was aimed at young people. It was on a university campus. It was a right wing hero, a conservative hero. It was one of their peers that they have been told took the shot. This guy, Tyler, I can't remember his last name. So I think
Robinson.
yeah, Robinson. So I think in a way, this one's is really significant. It's almost like potentially like the 9/11 for this conservative youth generation. It's going to really antagonize them in a way that I don't think they've been antagonized before. Will they take the bait? Will they now jump into this Civil War narrative that's going to be ongoing? Because if you look at the social media profiles, people like Andrew Tate, libs of TikTok, and then also even on Fox News, they were all using that terminology. Steve Bannon, it's a war, it's a civil war. Elon Musk tweeted, if we don't defend ourselves, we're going to get wiped out, something
and
along those lines,
Andrew Tate
paraphrasing.
Andrew Tate tweeted "Civil War," and
Yeah.
that guy's a total, CIA psyop. I mean, there you go.
So immediately that was the narrative. And I think that's the significance. And I don't think there's much use, and I don't think it's particularly healthy to spend months and months on the thing itself. It's more about where's it going to go and take us, and yeah, the division of people who maybe would otherwise agree on most things is there too. So there's people saying, "What, you actually think he really got killed?" As though that's an extreme position, and you should be thinking that he never got killed. So I don't think that's healthy either. It's just more infighting. I try to focus on what it means and where it's going to go. So that's my take. What about you, Monica? How are you thinking about this?
A lot of the stuff that you guys said, I totally agree with. I definitely think it was a very high level thing. Looked real to me, but and I think they let us really look at the videos because they want us to know that it's real or that some things are real. But I'm sure they're very sophisticated, so they could fake it. But again, I'm not going to answer that question. Whatever it is, it's a very high level operation, and it was done for a reason. It's not just some kid who is like a perfect shot and can engrave stuff on bullets. Like, it's definitely not that. I think starting with that, Charlie Kirk was what I would call probably a created person. So, he was very young. He appeared on Fox News at the age of 17. He was bankrolled by a guy who's a billionaire associate of the Koch brothers. He was featured in a South Park episode like this year. This is a guy who's been promoted so that everybody knows who he is, probably. And, that's why you would, if you're going to do a high level operation, it's got to be somebody who's pretty well known. I think it's, no coincidence or an amazing coincidence that his organization was called Turning Point USA, and this is being touted as a cultural turning point. To me, and that would involve what you guys are talking about: civil war, vigilantism, a lot of things like that. I would say, I'm not sure. I think sometimes these things, you need more to feed the fire. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's like more to come in the PSYOP realm. And also that these are the reactionaries, to use Marxist terms. Like, the reactionaries are the right. The counter reactionaries are legion, and they will, in my opinion, win. Like, this whole thing from the very beginning, including right-wing governments emerging in Europe, Trump, all of this is, the real problem for them were the constitutionalist, classical liberal, Ron Paul libertarians, and nobody even remembers us anymore. And so you bring all these people up, the left will react, and you'll get a Newsom with a whole lot more powers. I have more to say, but I'll take a breather.
I could just add, but I could also see the right, just a repeat of the 1930s. The right fascism of Mussolini, Hitler, and the rest. So I could see that actually winning out, and in some weird way, either being. I mean, it can go in so many directions. It could be coupled with the Zionists faction, or they could end up turning against the Zionism, as some people are theorizing. So it's hard to, yeah.
Yeah, there's been I was just gonna add to the, bit about, you know, I think it was you, Roy, you mentioned that already Ben Shapiro has taken over his show, or potentially is gonna. That was one of the weird parts of this for me, was that the content schedule had to be maintained. It was like, rather than establish the facts of the day, it was, here's some, footage of him in the casket. Now we're gonna have JD Vance take over his podcast and do a special episode. Then after the day after that, they had Ben Shapiro and a few other very
Matt
pro-Israel
Walsh.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt Walsh, and they took over the show. So it's there's definitely a very conscious element of trying to commandeer his platform and continue to use it, despite the fact that it was literally a few days ago the guy got shot. So that's very weird. I've never seen anything like that. Never seen anything like that before. And yeah, it feels, I did listen to some stuff. I haven't gone into it too much because, like you guys, I think it's not necessarily worth the time. But I did listen to some of Tucker Carlson's episode on it. I listened to a bit of Candace Owens, and all of them are discussing that in the months leading up to this assassination attempts, Charlie Kirk had supposedly caught the ire of his billionaire backers, who were very pro-Israel Zionists. So I think that's, in America, on the conservative right, that's kind of the conspiratorial angle, is that maybe this was a hit job because he was starting to turn against his big backers, and they wanted him to be even more pro-Zionist. Apparently, they wanted him to distance himself from Tucker Carlson, who's been quite outspoken against Israel recently. And so that's kind of, I'd say that's the mainstream conspiratorial angle here, is that he was turning against those people and they wanted to take back control over his platform, which they believed they had ownership over because they funded it.
I'd like to add to respond to those three things kind of backwards. One is that Israel thing emerged immediately, and Kirk was so buttoned up with these people that I thought if he was saying anti-Israel stuff, that was scripted for him. And then you have this opportunity to say, you can all eyes can be on Israel and say you did this, and Netanyahu comes out and is like, we didn't kill him. We did not kill that guy. And I'm thinking, okay, so what I'm hearing is, but we could have. So watch yourself. Like, it's funny because, if you're going to kill somebody, you might as well make it look like, look what happens when you say this stuff. That's one thing.
Just on that point, I just thought of just the whole thing is suspect when Netanyahu was at CNN or some mainstream other platform that they asked him if Israel killed Charlie Kirk. Like, just the fact that they're asking that on CNN to the prime minister of Israel is kind of like weird.
Saying the quiet part out loud.
Right, yeah.
Like, well, we know you guys killed people and got away with it. We're just wondering if this was one of your hits. Like, what's the downside of admitting it? He's like, boy, I wish it were. No, that's not funny. But I do think that is part of the narrative on purpose. I don't think it's some discovery. But I did want to say about like the how quickly they responded by stepping into his shoes. That video that you sent me of the wife's statement, I believe that was 48 hours after his death. And I don't know about you guys, but I've actually been close to violent, unexpected death. And I'm telling you, my dog was hit by a car and I was fucking wobbly for 3 days. Like, I have been around human beings who have gotten killed, and you don't compose yourself in 48 hours. I just don't buy that. So I don't know what was up with that, but it is part of a big focus on the conspiracy theories. There was a big article in the Wall Street Journal about, it was called like something about, it says Charlie Kirk's assassination unleashes the antisocial media. And it says, our newly democratized digital discourse seems on track to turn into a French Revolution-style terror. And it goes into conspiracy theories that feed into this stuff, the you deserve it crowd that's on the other side of it. But a lot of that, I think, also feeds into this idea Kash Patel suggested of suspending Section 230, which means that the only people who are going to end up on the internet with a big platform are incumbents because they're already there. If you close the door to and make people liable for what happens on their platforms, there's no more opportunity for building that stuff up. So I think the weird conspiracy theories are part of one of the agenda items, which is controlling the internet.
And if I could just add, again, we almost got to mention him every time, Alex Jones. So, you've noticed a lot of people jump ship from InfoWars, Greg Reese, latest Owen Schroyer, and now Alex Jones is selling Holy Wars apparel.
Oh my gosh.
And so this is kind of like that manufactured Civil War narrative. I also suspect that Owen Schroyer, the timing that Owen Schroyer decides to leave, like a week before Kirk's assassination or something like that, he decides to leave InfoWars and start spin off his own network. So you're seeing all these people who are some ways brought up through the big alt media platforms, like, I don't know, Stu Peters, and then all these people that pop out of nowhere. There's some Chinese professor now who just blew up. Like, all these people who blew up in an instant is just weird. And it's like what we've talked about before. They had the legacy media that was dying as social media and the internet came about. And then they took Tucker from legacy and remade him into the new media. Alex Jones became Fox News 2.0. Look at you, listen to him now. He's like literally Fox News. He's like, Trump is the best, Elon Musk, digital IDs, everything's great. We're winning, and then they spin off. So they're creating the new legacy media, the Owen Schroyer now, Alex Jones, and all this sort of stuff. And so I just found that very interesting.
Mike, do you want to respond to that? Because that Holy Wars thing blew my mind.
Nothing really. The only thing I wanted to say was it's one of those things where whichever narrative you choose, and I said this on X, whichever narrative you choose, you lose, because it just plays to this division that they're trying to create where everyone's siloing themselves into these random little boxes rather than just taking that 10,000 foot view and saying, why do we have another really odd assassination, with all of these strange things. Why is no one following protocol? Why haven't the facts been established? That's what people should focus on, because those things are always important. That's where truth lies. And that's where justice would be for the killers or killer of Charlie Kirk. So that's what I'd focus on. And also for the people who say, well, I think he never got killed or any other kind of conspiracy. Well, yeah, the truth would reveal that as well. So that's what we focus on. That's why we have, we've all seen crime scene investigation and these TV programs. They can do this. They're very good at doing that. So all resources and time should be focused on that. And that's really my, I guess, final words on this one. So I'll hand it back to you, Monica.
Those are all tells, and this guy has a ridiculous text exchange with his roommates, so it'll be obvious why he's going to plea bargain, capital punishments on the table. So don't expect a trial. But that thing with the holy wars is absolutely dovetails on one of my major items here, which is, since the last time we spoke, there was a Catholic church shooting. Now they're calling it a school shooting, but it was a shooting in a Catholic church. The videos from inside the church made me think that one was a psyop. But was it in Minneapolis, I think? I mean, you would have heard of it if it weren't for the Charlie Kirk thing, I think. It was big news for a while and recently. And it made it clear to me that, or reinforced my opinion that they are weaponizing Christianity, and like the fact that the Pope is American, not good, that he tweets, not good. They immediately, when this guy a trans person shot up this church who used to go to that school, well, when you hate trans people, this is what happens. When you love guns, this is what happens. And then you've got like the other side saying hopes and prayers or whatever, thoughts and prayers. But Charlie Kirk also had a very strong religious element there. And I think that dovetails into the pedo thing, which I think all was kind of hijacking the right to life momentum that the left could never suppress. And I think now they're just weaponizing that, and they're going to use that to fuel that reactionary heat that I do think will have a counter reaction. And I want to just say with her voice saying, yes, but it looks like what I'm paraphrasing, fascism rising. I totally agree with that, but totally, like I'm noticing, I literally got this book out I showed you guys earlier, Martin Bormann, Nazi in Exile. Like I'm literally seeing things that he did happening now with this administration, both from corporate control to authoritarianism to speech control, all of that. But remember, National Socialism is just National Socialism versus international socialism. And I have a big, long article from the Wall Street Journal talking about how this is igniting the international right. And you hear the protests in the UK. Charlie Kirk had just spoken in Seoul. You're hearing stuff from South America. I honestly think that this could be not only like a local civil war, hot or cold, but international. And then you can have international counter-reactionaries that will hijack before or after, a world government kind of thing.
Just to comment on that, Monica, I think you made some awesome points. Yeah, that holy wars thing and how that feeds into this big push towards Christianity and particularly Catholicism, actually. It's not, you don't hear many people talking about orthodoxy as such. It's more about Roman Catholicism with the American Pope. I think that makes sense. And yeah, I think, the left wing has always been, well, it's an ideology of war anyways. They're all about tearing down structures by any means necessary. They believe it's okay that human beings don't have a soul. So, if there's a guy over there that disagrees with you and his ideology is murderous, then yeah, you are okay to attack them. That's what Antifa are all about, this anti-fascist ideology. And it's always been like that on the far left. But the right has not taken the bait. There was January the 6th, which was a joke. And there hasn't really been anything where the right have really sunk their teeth into it and moved beyond saying, no, we just want to discuss this. We want to talk common sense. This could potentially do that. I think this could potentially do that. And all that rhetoric, this holy wars thing, if you can actually make it seem like the Christian thing to do is fight, is to actually go to war, well, that's a dangerous idea. And that could take people towards conflict.
Hervoy, did you want to respond to that? Because I definitely have something.
Nothing in particular, but just nothing in.
I don't want to
But well,
hog.
just earlier we've talked. I've commented on this before. The Christian nationalism. I've been warning. These occult New Age streams, and then this theocratic Christian nationalism that's been waiting in the wings. And Joel Webben and others. They're just becoming increasingly more radicalized. And I just sort of see a repeat of the 1930s, where again there were these occult banking forces behind Hitler, and they were using
Absolutely.
him as a vehicle, either as a vehicle to take over the world and establish world federation, or to use him as the pretext where he would eventually fail, and then the solution would be
The
a world
UN, which you
federation. So
got.
you can go either way,
You
right?
got it like
Yeah,
1948.
yeah, yeah.
So, and I agree, and it doesn't have to be real. It just has to look real. So I've mentioned to you guys before, Adrian Vermeule, the head of Catholic, the Catholic integralism in the United States, was the brainchild of this Harvard professor, whose other brainchild was cognitive infiltration in partnership with Cass Sunstein in that famous memo on conspiracy theories when Sunstein was Obama's information czar. So we know that that is a top-down psyop. It doesn't even have to get the buy-in to if the media portrays it as being the zeitgeist and driving these policies, they still can drive the policies from the top. And I think that about so another like fascism thing for sure is that Trump sent troops into LA, which I said was the slippery slope to posse comitatus. A judge recently said it was a violation of posse comitatus. Sends them into DC because DC is like a federal territory and he thinks he can, it's like an incrementalism. Next, he wants to go, I think he's going into Memphis saying, well, the Republican governor asked us to, so we are allowed. It's not a violation of posse comitatus. And I'm just thinking now that this right-wing stuff, the articles are talking about the internationalism of it. Trump's been hitting Venezuelan ships, accusing them of being drug stuff. I'm just wondering if he goes into Memphis, then he goes into Mexico, or goes into Memphis, then he goes into Venezuela and makes it look like that's what people want. But they don't have to really want it. You just have to feed that.
I just had, just on a side quest note, if they try to manufacture civil war between in the U.S., I mean, think about how, again, the EU is the model. You had World War II, and the solution was European Union. And so, what if they're going to try to apply that in other regions of the world? They've already been able to forward the EU model peacefully. African Union, ASEAN, Eurasian Union is underway, but they're using maybe Ukraine to speed that up. Um, and then what if they in the U.S., North America, they're having trouble accelerating it? There was a I was going to share this. There was this real quick. Here it is. They're going to have the talks again between the North American leaders, BlackRock and Mark Carney, Trump and Scheinbaum. And I always said it's lucha libre. We're gonna, they're gonna put what is it? Now it's Delta and Aeromexico. Trump is gonna by January cancel their sharing agreement, but they're gonna have the trade deals back on the table. So maybe that's not even gonna happen. So it's just they're gonna accelerate the North American Union. But my point is just to what you said. If you try to manufacture a U.S. Civil War, if that doesn't bite or it's not enough, that could then grow bigger if U.S. invades Mexico. So then you have like a war with the cartels that's amorphous, sort of like it's happening on the border
like
in
in the Middle
Mexico,
East,
in the
like
U.S.,
Afghanistan
and
and
then you've got
Osama.
U.S. Civil War, and who knows how bad that can get. Then the solution would be eventually North American integration. So that's just something I think to keep in mind. And then it just seems like the U.S. is going to dominate the Western hemisphere. It's basically
Agreed.
it's 1984, so Russia's taking Eurasia,
Yep.
China's taking its sphere with Thailand and Cambodia and Vietnam, and America's going to take Western. There was another story I had Peru. Just they're getting F-16s, which means U.S. Military and Peruvian military are going to grow tighter. The dollarization through stable coins of Latin America, and so yeah.
So just a couple of things, and then I think I would like to hear what Mike had to say about some of these corporate deals, which is just another element of this fascism rising. It's why I dug out the Borman book. But just a couple of things before we go on to that. Totally agree. Regional hegemony is this stepping stone. And I basically thought that was written in stone the day Biden took office and the Haitian prime minister or president was assassinated. Like that, it seemed like dominoes started to fall. We've got acceleration there, Ecuador. And I mean, that's why I worry about he's going to, these are acts of war against Venezuela. And Venezuela would be the stronghold. They've got the oil and stuff. But the one other, before we move on, like I think probably the biggest agenda item for the Kirk narrative is neutralizing the First Amendment, every single element. So you've got some religious war going on. Who knows how that'll come out? Maybe it'll make it even worse for trying to practice religion here. But it also has the right to petition, the right to petition for redress of grievances, the right to assembly, free speech, and some of the things that they're talking about here. They're using words like violent rhetoric, phrases like that, which is an oxymoron. All right. So violent rhetoric is an oxymoron, but that's what they're talking about. And they're trying, just like the left, to conflate words with actions or opinions with mens rea. And Pam Bondi is trying to backpedal on some of the things she said, but they're not only hitting it with, they're going to do this anti-Semitism bill, which will probably now expand to basically anything what they're going to call hateful or negative or whatever. This international right movement is folding in Islam with the radical left. So you're going to, work that stuff is going to, you're going to be a terrorist if you're do the pro-Palestinian thing. So they're going to have actual legislation. You're going to have the enforcement arms like Bondi and stuff interpreting existing law more broadly. Kash Patel said from the beginning he was going to send the FBI fan it around. But there's also, they want the people to rat on each other. And so there's many articles about corporations being pressured to fire employees who've expressed their political opinion, don't like Kirk or whatever. There's a lot of pressure to do that. There's pressure now to hold funding, the people who fund activist groups, if the activists do something that's deemed violent. So they're doing what I'm calling second order responsibility, so that parents are responsible for their kids, employers are responsible for their employees, funders are so then you have social pressure to chill each other out. And there's pressure to report if you see your friend or a coworker post something on social media. So there's and like what the Israel was saying, stuff like there's just the intention is to chill and punish the political dissent across the board. And the right wing might want it now, but wait till Newsom's president.
And I think this is a good to segue on top of what you just said to the technocracy stuff. If you don't mind, because how are they going to do that? Information liberation seems to lately just focus on a lot of Zionist stuff, but TikTok, right, is going to be bought by Oracle, Silver Lake, and Andreessen Horowitz. Essentially, he describes it as a small group of Zionist billionaires who are taking over TikTok, which was one of the, I guess, last remaining places where you could sort of criticize Israeli foreign policy, right? And then he also mentioned, this just happened, Palantir's Alex Karp, Bilderberger Karp, was given an award just the other day from American Friends of Chabad Lubavitch. And so again, you see sort of this, I think at this point, you cannot not see the Israeli, that there's a strong faction of this Zionist Israeli control in world affairs. And then there's that, and I just have a bunch of technocracy news. And he had there was another where was it? I lost it, but he had posted also Chris Menahan. Where is it here? Somewhere. That there was a rabbi at a Senate hearing saying that it was not enough to not be anti-Semitic. And so, anyways, that's a whole other rabbit hole. But Aaron Day says J.D. Vance has been groomed to become a dictator who dismantles America and hands it over to a technocracy. This is not a joke. I think this adds to everything we've been talking about, Kirk, and where this is all going, and then just a lot of crazy technocracy news stuff that's fallen by the wayside, like in Equatorial. I just saw this before we connected. Equatorial Guinea enforces year-long internet outage for island that protested construction company. So
Wow.
residents
Wow.
of an island wrote to the government complaining about dynamite
Petition for
explosions
redress, yes.
by a Moroccan construction company, and they didn't expect their swift end to their internet access.
Wow.
Dozens of the signatories and residents were imprisoned for nearly a year while internet access to a small island has been cut off. It says their lives have been made difficult without internet. Banking services shut down, hospital services for emergencies. Residents rack up phone bills they can't afford because cell phone calls are the only way to communicate. When the government shuts down the internet, they often instruct telecom providers to cut connections to designated locations or access to designated websites. So again, this is a shape of things to come, and then you see like Denmark
But it's
mandating.
social. I just want to interject that punished the entire group. So then you're going to be pissed at the people who did that potentially.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. Here it says someone speaking anonymously for being fear of being targeted by the government, and
Well,
then
now they're neighbors, I bet. You know
but
what I mean?
that's the social credit thing. You can't.
Yeah,
Your neighbor's not going to
totally.
help you because then he's going to be put on the blacklist.
Absolutely.
Right. And then Denmark is mandating facial recognition to keep violent fans out of football stadiums. It's like I'm totally against, who these hooligans, violent people, but again, it starts with them, and where does it end?
And then
Right?
you might want to encourage that. You might want to encourage that if you're looking for facial recognition, then you don't actually use traditional methods of keeping violence under control because you want it to get out of control so that you can do this thing.
Yeah, it says restrict individuals from attending matches. So today it's a violent hooligan. Tomorrow it's someone who criticized Israel or, one thing or any, the list just keeps getting longer. And then the algocracy, futurism report. So China is suddenly deploying AI everywhere, and they've got a 10-year plan to fully integrate AI into every aspect of the country's economy by 2035 called AI Plus. So that basically they're implementing algocracy, and AP did a piece on how Silicon Valley, how the West has basically built China's surveillance state. So there are these people now that saying there's no social credit system in China. It's like, look, there is. The Chinese government has posted about it itself. It's sort of in the background, but it was built by the West. And this article has a really good point that this is then going to come to the West. Again, it's a global project. And it says here, I had highlighted it. Did it disappear? That here it is. Because of this tech, we have no freedom at all. They say in China. At the moment, it's us Chinese that are suffering the consequences, but sooner or later, Americans and others too will lose their freedom. So it's a global project. And just a few more real quick. This was a great article. Your phone already has social credit. We just lie about it. So it's talking about how in the West, we already have social credit. LinkedIn, Uber, Airbnb. It's just not as open as it is in some places in China. It even says towards the end, I think, that when Uber can destroy your transportation access with a hidden algorithm, some people have been banned off of Uber or Airbnb. And in some places, even in Mexico now, you have difficult access to the old-fashioned yellow taxis. Uber is like the easiest. And so if I get knocked off of Uber, they're trying to take away our cars now, and if I lose Uber access, I'm screwed, you know? And so this article argues that China's approach, at least they're explicit about it in China, but in the West. So anyways, it's happening everywhere. Another article on how contactless card payments are gonna happen, and that already the youth, 3/4 of 16 to 24-year-olds regularly use mobile payments. And I forgot to mention James Corbett did a wonderful his weekly column where he was in Malaysia, and he said he couldn't buy food for cash anymore. The barista had to.
Like Mike's
He
experience.
Right, and so it's happening quick. Digital IDs in the U.S., your physical driver's license might be obsolete soon. Look how they conclude. They say that if you're under 40, your next license renewal might be your last physical um, card. And I'll just, I think, end on this. Patrick Wood did a really amazing. This one stood out on the Great Islamic Finance Convergence. If people use Archive today, they can get access to this paywalled post. His stuff is free for like 2 days, then goes behind the paywall. But
Nice.
he really
Clever.
does a deep dive on how it's the Middle East and the Sharia, was it banking, that have now run with the fintech cashless system. They are spearheading and developing it, and argues that it's almost like they've been able to take over the West, not through military means, but through financial uh, means. And so, anyways, there's a lot there. That was my quick update on the algorithm ghetto.
That was pretty comprehensive, Haroy. There was one that you missed that you reminded me of when you was speaking, and that was Vietnam. Did you hear about the bank account closures?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so Vietnam have closed, I think it's 86 million bank accounts because they instituted a new regulation that you had to update your details with biometric information. So they wanted you to have some biometric ID attached to your bank account. And if you refused or didn't, then they just closed or froze the bank account. So 86 million bank accounts have been frozen. And the government is saying, well, they are unused because they must be unused because you didn't upload the information we asked for. So this ties in with some other big moves that are happening in Vietnam. So one of them is they have a cashless day every year. So every year for 7 years in a row now, they've done cashless day. So it's a big move towards a cashless society. They're creating electronic medical records for every person. So all medical data is going to be integrated into this electronic identification system called VNEID, which is similar in sounding to that real ID. So yeah, there's this stuff's happening across the world. Wherever you look, they're implementing the same things. And Vietnam is most people think of Vietnam as some kind of backwards, non-technological society, lots of farmers still, but no, they're doing everything that we're. In fact, I think oftentimes what I'm noticing is on the fringes, the nations that are not really that discussed, it's advancing even quicker there because I think they can get away with it more. So yeah, that was another one that I found.
And the existing infrastructure isn't as robust.
Well, that's why they're leapfrogging.
Yeah.
So, they're bringing in, if you just got a smartphone, which are getting cheaper all the time, and just your mobile access, that's it. And there's people I consult with I offer consulting if anyone wants to chat with me, and I hear the stories of they've got international bank accounts, and then they get frozen. And I've got a Kazakh bank account just sort of dormant, and um, and you have your mobile Kazakh. I have my Kazakh mobile SIM card. But then since I left, they added that's your Kazakh number won't work unless you now go back to the office in Kazakhstan physically and give your eyeballs to link the biometrics. That's happening. That already happened in Russia. That's happening now. That's happened in the Middle East now. There was that famous foreign minister who refused to do it, and they basically unpersoned him. That was in Kuwait, I think. And then in Mexico now they're trying to do this. And so if you don't have your mobile access, you can't log into your bank. And now the bank is demanding it. And so this is happening everywhere. And I've been saying recently that the world of Doug Case's international man doesn't exist anymore. And so they're locking down every country and making it harder if you're not a citizen to be in an international um, person to be politically correct. And
I
so,
I think there's already a two-tier society though, because I think if you've got maybe one of these exclusive elite bank accounts, right, like a Swiss bank account it used to be, or in the UK, there's Coot, you need to have at least a balance of a few million. And if you've got a bank account like that and you want to draw out 50 grand, you can call up your banker and you'll get the 50 grand. But for the everyday man and woman, if you went and tried to get out $20,000, they're like, no way. What do you want it for? And there was a good video actually that I saw today of a woman in Australia and she went to her bank account to try and get, I think it was 20,000 Canadian dollars. So I don't know what that is in US. It's a lot less. But in any case, and they asked her what it was for, and she said, "Oh, I need to pay the builders." So they said, "Well, have you got the invoices?" She was like, "What?" She was like, "No." And they said, "Well, we can't give you it. You've got to prove to us that you're getting the work done, that you're stating the money's for. And she was just bewildered, and she obviously got into a back and forth discussion. And they said, ultimately, it's up to us. Now, I had this happen to me about a year and a half ago. I tried to buy something online that was beyond what I would normally buy. They called me up, which is fair enough. Okay, call me up to do some checks. But she still refused it. Even after I'd gone through all of the verification and shown her who I was, that it is me, she still refused it. She said, "We don't believe the company you're sending it to, that the bank account is legitimate, so we're declining it." I said, "I have quadruple checked the details. It's fine. And if it's wrong, I'll lose the money." She said, "No, we're still not putting it through." So they have control. But just going back to what you said, Hawaii, really great comment about this international man. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Doug, but I think, yeah, how can you be an international man if they control you through biometrics, where you can go, every document's now digital, all your bank accounts are surveilled and locked into one system, it's going to be impossible to kind of escape. And this for me is the biggest worry is what do you do when everything's centralized and the means of physical is taken as well, so we can't use cash. You doesn't matter where you have properties, it doesn't matter where you have passports, it's yeah, you're locked down because they'll
Yeah, I mean, we're completely cooked. Um, which is why lately I've been thinking it's better. I came across this great idiom. I mentioned it the other day. Um, where is it on my desktop here? Chinese idiom about a cunning rabbit has three burrows. So it was back in the ancient China where one of the advisors um, said he devised three secure locations for the Chinese leader to find refuge in, and it just so happens I've got three citizenships, and so lately I've been thinking in this algorithm ghetto, technocratic one world totalitarian state we're headed into. I just don't feel comfortable living in a jurisdiction anymore where I'm not a citizen. So I think if you're at least
Hmm,
if you have two citizenships or
I do.
three,
Yeah.
moving between those countries, I think at least you should be okay. But if you have like a residency, Marco Rubio's already talking about stripping U.S.
Yes.
citizens of their passports, and I'm thinking, I wonder how that would work out for me
And
because
green cards.
if he takes away my U.S. passport as an American, I'm like, okay, I can still leave the country on my other passports. You can't stop me, guys. I'm going to leave on my other passport and I can still come back into America, even though I don't have a U.S. passport because, I've got other U.S. proof of citizenship. So you can't deny a U.S. person entering the U.S. So, but you're hearing people who have, in Mexico now, they're talking about if you criticize the Mexican government and you're not a citizen, they'll just end your visa. Right. And so that can easily be taken away from you. So your mobility can just some government functionary doesn't like what you said, you're gone from that country. And so even if you have a property there, life can become more complicated. And I've had the same experiences. So in Croatia now, I have a Croatian bank account. Um, they said my information, I had needed to update it while I was there. My Mexican bank account was restricted, um, just inexplicably by the algorithm in the app. And so it's like, what? It's a minefield.
Well, I was trying to get it's a long story. I won't go into the details. I'll just like shorthand stuff, but I wanted to get my son, my special son, an ID, but he's 23, but he's never really had anything because he has Down syndrome. So they wanted a bank in order to get it. They wanted a bank account, and a cell phone number. And I just kind of, wrote down numbers of whatever, somebody else's bank in my family. I just other stuff. They realized they knew immediately that that the bank account and the phone number was not registered to my son, to his social security number or to whatever. And they were like pushy about it. They were like, "Yeah, what's going on here?" And I'm like, "Ugh, forget it." Um, but I realized then that your phone number and your bank account are are your identity. And because you have those things, you don't realize that you have to have those things and that they are now part of you. So all the stuff about the 1974 Privacy Act where they're not supposed to have single, account numbers and stuff, that it's already over. And I told you when we tried to get into the country, he'd never been out of the country before. He didn't even have to show his passport because they just looked at his face. He's never been out of the country before.
It's
I
the
think
yeah.
No, go ahead, Harvey.
No, it's the border industrial complex, you know, it's, I had that interview with Todd Miller, and he said they're scaffolding this out to every country, and you see them now bringing in the electronic, travel authorizations, country by country. So it's the visa for your visa, they're gonna screen your thoughts, and then, exit entry, strict exit entry, so when you enter a country, that you give all of your biometrics, and so it's gonna be literally a prison planet with all of these different districts, so they'll at the push of a button, they'll be able to just deny you travel. Yeah, so
I have to say, I think about like, so what will really happen once they're totally locking us down and we have the social credit score or whatever, you can't make any political dissent, blah, blah, blah. Uh, what what will really happen? And I'll tell you, I think nobody really talks about it, but this stuff with the government, the US government, Trump, whoever he's a puppet for, getting involved in corporate governance, in making investments, in generating fees for their buddies, in structuring trade deals, making threats about trade in order to get a quid pro quo of specific investments, of going and suing of media outlets or law firms in order to get pro bono work or curate their behavior. I mean, that's the bottom line, is that I think it is fascism, not 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 just this fascist feeling that I want to control society, but I think all the occult stuff and all of that really is overplayed compared to the good old fashioned money. Control the money, control the business. There's an international fascism coming, the public private stuff. And really the bottom line is we just have to shut the F up and be small and be happy with the little that we have. And if you don't, then yeah, you can't leave, you can't come in. But if you just shut up and, if you're rich, you get Chick-fil-A instead of McDonald's. But I really think it's about that money, about the corporate control.
Well, this takes us back all the way to the start, which is bread and circuses. You know, we get the bread and circuses. We spend months arguing about all of these different events that keep happening and who's responsible, whilst actually the world is being rewired, made before our eyes. And, that's why I think it's useful to always look beyond those things and say, well, how's it going to be used? And I think tonight's episode, we've covered quite a few of those things. And maybe we could have this as maybe our final section, because I know we're kind of doing a little
gold,
short one this time.
gold.
Yeah, Roy is
Yeah,
not
gold.
well.
Yeah, so
You
we've
have
got yeah, well,
little
yeah,
baby.
we've all discussed gold many times on our shows.
Hit a record, right?
It's I think it's something like the 35th or 6th all time high in the last 24 months. So it just keeps climbing. And yeah, I won't get into why that is. We could discuss it for a long time. One interesting thing about gold, which is kind of not related to the price rising, but that's really, I would say if you want to know what gold's about right now, it's just a vote of no confidence in the US dollar. It's just a vote of no confidence. There's lots of people getting rid of treasuries. Central banks, India, for example, they're dumping treasuries, and they explicitly said we're selling treasuries to buy gold. But it's also now investment companies, hedge funds and big investors are saying, well, why would I want to have listen to this, a 30-year US Treasury yields about 5%. Gold's up 40% in a year. Can you imagine getting paid 5% for holding US debt for 30 years? The dollar's not going to be here for 30 years. So people are saying this is ridiculous. I don't know what yield you'll have to give someone to get them to buy US debt, but 5% ain't going to cut it for 30 years. 30 years, by the way, the dollar's lost 10% in value this year alone. So you've already gone underwater on a 30-year bond. But anyway, one thing that I wanted to ask you two guys, I've not even brought this up previously. Did you see when, what's the guy's name who is it the CEO of Apple? Tim Cook, is it?
Yeah.
That he took that award to Donald Trump at the White House. He gave him this award that they'd made. And I don't know what the award was for, but it was the base of the award was a 24-karat gold bar. Like
Oh,
literally, it's like a 24-karat gold bar.
Wow.
It was another bribe,
I
right?
was going to say that's Trump style payola for sure.
And the weirdest thing
Wow.
about it is, I wish I'd have got the video, but listeners will be able to find it on X easily. The weirdest thing is there's Donald Trump, Howard Lutnick, Scott Bessent all stood there in the background, and he says, "Oh, and this is your award, Mr. Trump, and I'm going to put it together for you." And they all kind of watch him as he does this humiliation ritual, putting together this tacky plaque on a gold base. And I just thought, like, how are they getting away with this? That gold bar is
Unfucking
probably worth
believable.
about half a
Sorry.
Well,
mil.
it said it was
Sorry.
just the base, so it's not. I don't know if it's
It's huge. Well, the picture I'm looking at looks huge. It could
Oh,
be a
it's a
trick of the eye.
yeah, it's a full gold bar, like a proper 24 karat gold bar.
It is pretty big, yeah.
See, and it says
So
Trump on the plaque. So if it said the US, because I used to, when I was a banker, I was pretty scrupulous about, you'd have like what deal toys or presents. And I would write the company name if it was meant to be like in the lobby, or the individual's name if it was meant for them. And I remember at one company, they said, oh, yeah, like the CEO took that giant, expensive thing home. And I was like, wow, that's totally unethical. You're not supposed to do that. This has Trump's name on it. So he's not going to leave it behind, right? Because it's
doubtful.
not a bribe if he doesn't get to keep it.
Well, it was an award for Trump, like you said, yeah, not for the US. So, but there's a lot of this going on, is my point. And, just today, I think it was Donald Trump was in the UK getting a chariot ride with King Charles III, and they signed a lot
Really?
of tech deals. Yeah. So, over the last 2 days, apparently about 4 or 5 US companies have told Great Britain they're going to be expanding their presence there. So, yeah, fascism. Fascism is when the state starts to work hand in hand with corporations, so they are essentially one and the same. And the US has taken a 10% stake in Intel. They have said they're going to allocate $5 billion to invest in critical minerals and mining companies. And this is just going to keep expanding, I think. Yeah. And obviously, along the way, there's people like Trump, but not just Trump. Larry Ellison and Oracle. I think, is Larry Ellison now the third richest man in the world, or is it the US? I'm not
Well,
sure,
it
but
would probably be the world.
Oracle's share price has gone up a few 100% because they're getting all of this extra business through the
Richest
association
man
of
in the
Ellison
world
and Trump. Wow.
as of
Yeah.
September 2025, which is now.
Yeah, and he's the guy who's always stood beside Trump. So, yeah, just going back to what you said, Monica, yeah, I think it's like, I don't know what to call it. It's an oligarchy, it's a kleptocracy, it's everything.
But we really see now it's all coming together. The global oligarchy, where I mean, there was that meeting you're referring to. I mean, Tim Cook, Zuckerberg, all of those folks were in the White House. What was it, a few weeks ago? Um, and the East again, the West helped build China's technocracy, and then those lessons at that laboratory are being brought back to the West, to Europe, and the rest of the global South. And so the one world technocratic state is coming together swimmingly. May the odds ever be in your favor.
How about you, Monica? Do you have anything to add to that? Because I know you've done a bit of research on this too.
Um, no, I
Oh,
mean,
actually,
it's
sorry, just
just,
to throw one more in.
I ranted my rant.
Trump also wants to change the SEC filings. So instead of having quarterly filings for companies, it's going to go to annual, which means
Oh
we
my
won't get to
gosh.
find out their
I know.
earnings.
I was like, stay in your lane, Orange Man. Like, you do not need to be telling the SEC how to do its filings. And if anything, could anything be more obvious that he's got like somebody's hand up his shirt telling him what to say? What the hell does he care? How would he dig into that? What they just don't want to pay for it, or they want some lead time or whatever, but it can't possibly be Trump's brainchild. That is another thing that's wrong with all this. Why is Trump wasting his time negotiating deals between TikTok and Oracle and Silver Lake and Horowitz Andreessen? Why is he doing that? It is absolutely, can I rant a little bit? You have one more minute? It is, they act like, oh, we got to get TikTok out of the hands of the Chinese because they hate us, they're bad, and all these guys love us, but it's ridiculous because the government and those oligarchs or whatever have more of an interest in controlling our media through censorship and surveillance, which TikTok will do that for them. They want to get their hands on the algorithm TikTok uses has value. And the idea that well, okay, yeah, but they're still protecting us from China. Did you guys ever hear of Gal Luft, this Israeli guy who was arrested? He was arrested because he got under the, he turned on the wrong guy or whatever. Like that, it was definitely vendetta. But what he was arrested for was getting a Chinese operative into Trump's first administration. And the suspected operative was James Woolsey, who I think was like a former CIA director or something. I mean, this is in mainstream news. So the idea that they are, and Biden had tons of the Chinese stuff too. The idea that they're protecting us from China while they line their own pockets, not true. And ByteDance went up, shot through the roof. China, it's coercion to get them to do a deal they didn't want to do, but they are benefiting from it to some extent, and they'll get the NVIDIA chips and all of that. So it's all this wheeling and dealing. And just a little tidbit I'm not sure I mentioned last time is a lot of these deals, the trade deals, Trump settled for. Japan was one of them. I think Vietnam might have been another. Okay, you'll just give us hundreds of billions of dollars in investment and I'll decide where it goes. And that gives Trump a lot of money and power to execute on his AI overinvestment, bubble creation, executive orders that really would be toothless without funding, which he would have to go to Congress for. So that's a lot of this wheeling and dealing. And the last thing I will say is TikTok, one of the requirements of the deal is that the U.S. government places somebody on the board of TikTok. And that is all over this Martin Bormann Nazi in Exile book. He established 750 corporations in what was called, quote, neutral countries, escaped to Argentina, according to this book by Paul Manning. And that's why Germany made such an amazing recovery after the war, because they were controlling so many, they had so many investments in other countries. But it's a real fascist trick to put government or your cabal's representatives on the boards, get a piece of the action, control it, siphon it, and tap into, a lot of times, some of the subsidies and advantages that those companies get from their own countries. So it's really, it's complicated. It's an old game. And I think that's probably, people don't focus on that. We're led not to focus on that stuff, I think.
I just wanted to add the crypto angle on that just real quick. And what you said Trump was doing, with the TikTok tech stuff. And then Eric Trump came out, I think, the other day and said Bitcoin is the greatest strategic asset. And then you had in Belarus, I think, like Lukashenko, there was a story the other day talking about how he's encouraging now more crypto liberalization of crypto use in Belarus because of the U.S. sanctions. And it's almost as if like the sanctions are being used to cryptify the rest of the world. And even in Mexico, again, I think all of these pretexts, most of them are fake. So you have this pretext of the cartels. Okay, we have to separate these things. Things are out of control in terms of corruption and cartels. It's insane here in Mexico. That's true. But the pretext that they used, there were some banks in Mexico, like Intercam Bank and a few others, that they said were laundering money from the cartels, and they were sanctioned by the U.S., which effectively rendered them useless and bankrupt. But it's like, what bank isn't laundering money for the cartels? HSBC and all these others. Like, are you kidding me? Like the double standards, that everything should be shut down. And so then I heard the story that I'm thinking that some of these banks, like Intercam and others, are more like the legacy model. And we're talking about algorithm ghetto. Using those types of banks, maybe you could still sort of survive outside of the algorithm ghetto. So the Intercam was bought, or one of those banks was bought by a company called Capital with a K, Capital Bank, which was created from the outset with a new architecture and infrastructure of fintech, digital ID, AI, and everything. So Capital bought Intercam, um, and then it's working on the whole digital algorithm ghetto stuff. So it's almost like it was a pretext, the narco pretext to sanction these Mexican banks, to then take them over, so that in Mexico you don't have any other option except for this digital online banking. And then Binance is coming into Mexico. You've already got Bitso, the crypto exchange, and then Binance is going to come in, and they're getting rid of the old-fashioned banks in Mexico. And so you see the same thing in Belarus. They're using the sanctions to make Belarus onboard crypto. So yeah,
Classic conflict of interests that they want to promote that kind of violence and scariness because that gives them power to do more other stuff. And I will also say anti-corruption laws, domestic and especially international, which they're talking about within the US in the wake of the Charlie Kirk thing, are absolutely there. Everybody's corrupt, and the anti-corruption laws are there so that the enforcer has total control over whom to punish and whom to allow to continue to benefit from the corrupt system.
I agree.
And with that, it's 4 in the morning or whatever.
Yeah, well, there's lots that we could have added to this as well. There's the potential color revolution in Nepal. That's
I was thinking
happening.
that. First thing I did was look at National Endowment for Democracy, and they've had programs there, including infiltrating the media and infiltrating the youth. And both of those things were what made this happen. So they've got smoking guns right on. I actually have it as a story to bring to you guys, but that's really the nutshell.
Yeah, and that was I read.
But yeah, I think that's a great place.
I was just gonna say on Nepal, there's a quick
No
rundown
problem.
that there was like a Discord server, and that some young people using this gaming tech made a vote. They burned. They went after the prime minister. People were killed, and
I
now
think the wife was killed.
this youth now basically elected new politicians. So it's because when you mention NED, they use all of these tech systems were developed for these purposes, like Signal, Tor, all of these Twitter,
Discord's in the Charlie Kirk story.
right? Big tech platforms, in these countries, like where I used to live, Kazakhstan, Nepal. It's Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp. Those are the things that get shut down, like in Turkey and Kazakhstan, because those are the those are the weaponized military information platforms that are used for mind control, brainwashing, and regime change. And Serbia as well. I just read recently that Russian intelligence says, but in this case, I think it's true that Brussels is running with Washington, prepping. They've been going after Serbia for the longest time. So yeah.
Yes, literally the longest time.
Okay, guys. Well, that was another great conversation.
Yes.
Again, lots of unanswered questions still with all of these things that we're talking about, but I appreciate both of your views. And yeah, I'll be interested to hear what listeners have to say on these topics too. So I'm going to end it there from me. Thanks everyone for listening. You can find me over on Substack. It's Parallel Mike on Substack. You can also find me on YouTube.
I'm Monica Perez. You can find the Monica Perez Show also on Substack, also on YouTube. I have some subscription options on iTunes and Substack to get commercial free. And I also spend a lot of time on Twitter for no apparent reason because I'm completely shadow banned. But if you go to @Monica Perez Show, you can actually see what I'm thinking on a daily basis.
Yeah, I also spend a considerable amount of time on X, as well as Geopolitics and Empires Telegram, and so people can go to geopoliticsandempire.com or geopoliticsandempire.substack.com and become a paid subscriber, donate, check out my affiliates like expatmoneysummit.com, and I guess that's it for this monthly roundtable.